The Holy Gospel according to Luke. Glory to you, O Lord. As the people were filled with expectation, and all were questioning in their hearts concerning John, whether he might be the Messiah, John answered all of them by saying, I baptize you with water, but one who is more powerful than I is coming. I am not worthy to untie the strap of his sandals. He will baptize you with the Holy Spirit and fire. His winnowing fork is in his hand to clear his threshing floor and to gather the wheat into his granary. But the chaff he will burn with unquenchable fire. Now when all the people were baptized and when Jesus also had been baptized and was praying, the heaven was opened, and the Holy Spirit descended upon him in bodily form like a dove. And a voice from heaven, You are my Son, the beloved. With you I am well pleased. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. Verify you are human. Nothing quite brings you to the brink of an existential crisis quite so quickly as that tiny dialogue box prompting you to check a box to confirm that you are indeed a human being and not a robot before granting you the privilege of logging into your online account. In an age of identity theft, it's no wonder companies go to such lengths, irritating as they often are, to safeguard our information, to confirm that you are who you say you are. Our identities are deeply personal, from the identities that we are born into, our racial and ethnic backgrounds, our nationalities, our genders, to the identities we take on as we grow and mature, our careers, our alma maters, the sports teams we root for, the churches and other organizations that we belong to. Our identities give us a sense of self and belonging, announcing as much to ourselves as to those around us, this is who I am. Questions about the identity of the Messiah have been swirling in the imaginations of the crowds who have come to see John in the wilderness and to hear his preaching. Are you the one? They ask expectantly, hopefully. And long before he has done a single noteworthy thing, Jesus too gets in line at the water's edge, waiting his turn to be baptized. In Luke's gospel, as one commentator summarizes, Jesus has not yet healed a sick person, raised a dead one, fed or taught the masses, conquered or subdued the elements, or gathered and dispatched disciples, when all of a sudden he hears the affirmation pouring out of heaven, You are my Son, the beloved. With you I am well pleased. In a single utterance, it seems to be an answer to the crowd's swirling identity questions. This is the Messiah. Maybe. Or maybe this is a more personal, perhaps even solitary moment, meant primarily for Jesus. In those verses missing that we didn't read between John's preaching and the comparatively brief account of Jesus' baptism, Luke writes of how Herod, once called out by John for all the evil things that Herod had done, Luke's words, had John thrown in prison, a detail that Luke alone inserts before Jesus' baptism. And in fact, narratively and textually speaking, there is no evidence in Luke's gospel that John is the one who baptized Jesus. All we know for sure in this moment is that there's Jesus, the Holy Spirit dove, and a voice from heaven. You are my Son, the Beloved. With you I am well pleased. Some identities are earned, and some identities just are. With you I am well pleased. With you. Not for anything you have done, but for who you are. There is something powerful about baptism. As Pastor Vicki Flippen reflects on her ministry, she says, whenever I do baptismal counseling, I always emphasize this moment in Jesus' baptism. And I tell folks that baptism is the church declaring what has always been true, that each of us belongs to God and only to God. And that claim of God becomes more and more important as we wander through the maze of life with so many individuals and institutions trying to declare ownership over us. Our baptism can remind us that no one determines our worth in this world or in the next other than God. And as she goes on in this powerful litany, to the prisoner it means you do not belong to the bars and chains around you. You belong to God. To the addicted it means you do not belong to that thing which you crave. You belong to God. To the dying it means you do not belong to this body or to that cancer. You belong to God. To the patriot it means you do not belong to this nation. You belong to God. To the debtor it means you do not belong to any bank or credit card company. You belong to God. To the empty and overworked it means you do not belong to your company. You belong to God. To the depressed it means you do not belong to this sadness. You belong to God. To the abused it means you do not belong to the person or the memories that hurt you. You belong to God. There is something powerful about baptism, and it is nothing that we can do or earn. In his baptism, Jesus' identity is confirmed. And in our baptism, too, we hear God's powerful, unshakable words of promise. You are my child, beloved. With you I am well pleased. In baptism, as our liturgy reminds us, we are sealed by the Holy Spirit and marked with the cross of Christ forever. In these waters, we are given an identity and a sense of belonging that no one or nothing can ever take away. In these waters, we are held eternally in God's abiding love and care. This is indeed who we are and who God says we are, beloved children of God.